Have you ever felt like someone close to you was harboring a deep secret? Something that was never spoken, but that lingered in the air like an ancient perfume. In 1957, Evelyn May Parker, then 22, lived in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and seemed to live an ordinary life. But what no one knew was that her soul carried a weight she would never dare share with anyone. Evelyn was a substitute teacher at a rural school, the daughter of a Baptist minister and a seamstress. The house was small, with a wooden porch and windows always open to the warm summer breeze. Everything seemed peaceful. But on a sultry September afternoon, something happened in that small town that would change the course of her life forever, and that event would be kept under lock and key for more than 6 decades. Before I continue, I want to say that I ask God to bless you with all His infinite love, giving you much health, peace, joy, and faith, for we can never lose faith in God, for He will never abandon us, for His love is eternal and infinite. I also take this opportunity to ask that you like the video and subscribe to the channel. This helps me a lot, thank you. That day, Evelyn received an unexpected note, discreetly left on her desk in the staff room. It was handwritten in shaky letters. "I need to talk to you. Urgent. Behind the church at 5. She read it with her heart pounding. She had never received anything like it, especially not from someone she suspected. The note was from James Whitmore, a young soldier from the nearby military base. They had bumped into each other a few times at the town fair, exchanging glances, shy smiles. But Evelyn knew her father would never approve of this relationship. James was of the world, she was of the church. What no one knew was that this world had already left more than glances between them. At that meeting behind the church, James revealed that he had been called overseas and wouldn't be returning any time soon. With tears in his eyes, he held her hands and said, "Evie, I love you. And I need to tell you something." But before he could continue, the pastor, Evelyn's own father, appeared. The scene that followed was never forgotten. The pastor's shout echoed like thunder, "Get away, in the name of God!" Evelyn was dragged away by the arm, crying, unable to say a word. James was never seen again. Some say he was transferred to Okinawa. Others swear he was punished for having an affair with a local girl. But for Evelyn, in that moment, the world had stopped. In the following days, Evelyn fell ill. Fever, vomiting, fainting. Her mother thought it was nerves. Her father said it was divine punishment. The truth was quite different. Evelyn was pregnant. But no one could know it. At that time, in a small religious town, a pregnant unmarried woman was practically ostracized from society. It was then that her mother, Mrs. Lillian, made a decision that still seems like something out of an old movie. She sent Evelyn to a distant Greytant's house in Ohio. "Tell her you're visiting relatives. Go. Take your Bible. Pray a lot," she said, hiding her belly with a wool coat even in the October heat. And Evelyn went, without question, with a broken heart and a life on the way. On the old farm in Ohio, Evelyn spent the months in complete silence. The letters she was trying to write to James were never sent. Her great-aunt didn't talk much. She only prayed. Everything was surrounded by strictness and discipline. Evelyn read the Psalms every day, and even though she didn't understand God's plans, she felt a need to trust. It was the only thing that kept her going. The night she went into labor, a storm raged over the city. Lightning lit up the sky, and Evelyn screamed alone in the dark room. The birth was difficult. The pain was excruciating. But when she finally heard the baby's cry, an overwhelming feeling overcame her. Love, fear, and a terrible certainty. That child would not stay with her. Just as dawn broke, a couple arrived by car. They were family acquaintances. Evelyn didn't know their names, only that they were coming to pick up the baby. She couldn't even hold the child for more than 5 minutes. "It's better this way," they said. She simply closed her eyes and whispered, "God, forgive me." And in that moment, something inside her broke. Forever. When she returned to Fayetteville months later, no one mentioned what had happened. Her mother simply said, "Life goes on. God will understand." But Evelyn knew that page would never be turned. Silence became her new identity. She never spoke to anyone about James. She never mentioned the child again. The pain was buried deep in her heart. She moved on, marrying a widower named Thomas, who already had 2 grown children. She lived with him for almost 40 years. She was a good wife, a respectable stepmother, active in church, and a volunteer in the choir. But everyone who knew her said, "She has a sad look in her eyes, like someone who's left something behind." And they were right. For the next few years, Evelyn seemed to carry an invisible weight. There were nights when she woke up crying, calling for someone. When questioned, she would say it was just a nightmare. And so the years passed, until, one autumn morning, now a widow and living with her granddaughter, Emily, an antique cabinet fell over while she was cleaning the basement. The wood shattered with a loud crash. Emily ran in fright. Among the boards, dusty albums, and old boxes, something caught her eye, a small metal box with a padlock. It was beautiful, delicate, and looked as if it hadn't been opened in decades. Emily couldn't resist her curiosity. It seemed to contain memories forgotten in time. She took the box upstairs and showed it to her grandmother. Evelyn turned pale. Her hand trembled. She touched the box as if she were confronting a ghost. Emily insisted, "Can I open it, Grandma?" And Evelyn simply said, "This isn't a pretty story. But maybe it's time you knew." And in that instant, the silence of 66 years began to crack. From then on, the house changed. Evelyn began rummaging through drawers, opening albums, looking at letters. It was as if a secret world was revealing itself. Each object seemed to tell a story. And what no one imagined was that this small find would open the doors to a story of love, loss, faith, and the reunion that seemed impossible. The small metal box was locked, but the old rusty padlock gave way with a soft click. Emily took a deep breath before opening it. Inside was a stack of yellowed letters, a few faded photos, a carefully tied baby blue ribbon, and a single, separately folded sheet of paper with a handwritten name, James. It was Grandma's handwriting, no doubt. Emily would recognize those letters anywhere. It was the same one that wrote Christmas cards and verses stuck to the refrigerator. But this paper looked different. The edges were frayed, as if it had been folded and unfolded many times. And the contents, that would change everything. Evelyn asked for some time alone. She sat in the living room chair, staring at the letter for long minutes, as if silently conversing with the past. Outside, the sky threatened rain, and inside the house, time seemed to stand still. When she finally called Emily back, her voice was soft but firm. "Sit down, dear. I need to tell you a story." Evelyn began reading the letter aloud, tears streaming down her face. It was a love letter written to James, dated December 1957. She spoke of the baby, her fear, her love for him, and how she would never forget him. "If you ever return, know that our daughter was born healthy, and that part of me died giving her away." Emily fell silent, unsure of what to say. The woman she'd known as a sweet, organized grandmother now revealed a silent, ancient, and profound pain. "You had a daughter before Mom was born?" Emily asked, a lump in her throat. Evelyn nodded. "She was my first child. But no one knew." With each word spoken, it was as if an invisible crack opened in the floor of that house. Emily's world began to spin. Who was this child? Where was she? Was she still alive? Did she have any clue? Evelyn, her hand on the Bible in her lap, replied, "I never knew. Only the Lord knows where she is now." In the box was also a black-and-white photo. A young woman lay in a hospital bed, a sheet covering her body, her face drawn but serene. Beside her, a nurse held a baby wrapped in blankets. "That's me," Evelyn said. "They took this picture before they took her away." Emily could hardly believe what she was hearing. Her grandmother, who always seemed to have led such a perfect life, had experienced such a tragedy, and never told anyone. Evelyn replied sweetly, "Because the pain was too great, and because back then, being a single mother was the end of everything. My father would have thrown me out of the house. I would have been rejected by everyone." But what no one expected was that the story was about to take a turn. As Emily continued rummaging through the box, she found a letter Evelyn had never read. It was still sealed, with the name Evelyn M. Parker on the envelope, and the sender L.W. "This isn't mine," Evelyn muttered. "I've never seen this handwriting before." Emily opened it carefully. The letter was dated 1961, written by a woman named Louise Whitmore, James's mother. She said her son had died on a military mission and that, shortly before his death, He confessed to having a daughter in Fayetteville. Louise swore she would do anything to find her and bring her back to the family. Evelyn was in shock. "Oh my God! I didn't know he was dead." The tears came hard now. 4 years, she'd harbored the secret hope that James was still alive, maybe married, maybe happy, but alive. Learning of his death reopened a wound that had never fully healed. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. At the end of the letter, Louise mentioned the child's name. "Little Hope has been adopted by a wonderful family in Texas. They call her Hannah now. If you ever want to see her, here's the address." Emily's eyes widened. "Grandma, that's a clue." Evelyn held the paper as if it were made of glass. This was real. After decades of silence, here was a loose thread of her story finally emerging. "Do you want to look for her?" Emily asked, filled with emotion. Evelyn didn't answer immediately. Her eyes were fixed on a cross on the wall. After a few seconds, she whispered, "Yes." That night, Emily researched everything she could. She used social media, old records, and public archives. The address was old, but it served as a starting point. And the more she searched, the more she sensed something much bigger was about to happen. Evelyn, for the first time in years, slept peacefully. And she dreamed of her daughter. The next day brought hope. Emily discovered that her adoptive family still lived in the same town in Texas. What's more, a woman named Hannah Whitmore appeared in local records as a volunteer at a Methodist church. Evelyn's heart sank. Whitmore. She kept her last name. It was like a miracle. A chance Evelyn never imagined she'd have. After 66 years, there was real hope of reunion. But along with the excitement came fear. "What if she doesn't want to see me?" Evelyn asked. "What if she hates me for abandoning her?" Emily squeezed her hand and replied, "She needs to know you never stopped loving her." With great care, they wrote a letter. Evelyn rewrote everything with simple, sincere words. She spoke of pain, love, and faith. She asked for forgiveness. And she asked for only one thing: the chance to look her daughter in the eyes and tell her she had never forgotten her. Emily mailed the letter, and for days, they both waited with heavy hearts. But the answer didn't come by letter. It came by phone. And it wasn't Hannah. The phone rang late in the afternoon, and Evelyn answered with trembling hands. A gentle, female voice said, "Hello, my name is Claire. I'm Hannah's daughter." Evelyn was silent for a few seconds. Claire continued, "My mother received your letter. She cried. A lot. And she asked me to call to find out if it's true." Evelyn couldn't answer right away. She felt tears welling up before any words could come out. Emily, sitting nearby, squeezed her hand. When she finally spoke, Evelyn simply said, "It's true. I'm her mother." There was a sigh on the other end of the line. "She wants to see you. But she needs time." Over the next few days, Evelyn and Emily began sorting through old boxes, trying to find more fragments of that long-buried story. Then, at the back of a closet, they found a photo album. Its brown leather cover was grimy with age. Evelyn hesitated. "This album is very old. My mother kept it with great care." They opened it together, carefully. The first few pages were familiar, photos of Evelyn's parents, their old house, picnics, and Christmases past. But then images began to appear that Emily had never seen, and that Evelyn barely remembered. Unfamiliar children, birthday parties, faces deliberately blurred with black marker. "Why are these faces scratched out?" Emily asked, puzzled. Evelyn frowned. "I didn't do this. It looks like my mother." There was one particularly disturbing photo, a young woman who looked like Evelyn, holding a newborn baby, but both their faces were covered in black paint. Emily felt a chill. "Is that you with the baby?" Evelyn nodded, staring at the image. "I think so. But why would my mother hide this? Why erase it?" It was as if someone was trying to erase a part of history, or hide something even bigger. Something Evelyn never fully knew. It was then that they found an envelope taped to the back of the album cover, as if someone had hidden it on purpose. Inside were 4 loose photographs and an old, yellowed letter signed by Lillian M. Parker, Evelyn's mother. The letter began with a plea for forgiveness and ended with a cutting sentence, "I hope someday you'll understand me." Evelyn began to tremble. Emily read the letter aloud. Lillian confessed that, upon learning of her daughter's pregnancy, she was in despair. She never told her husband, Evelyn's father, for fear of shame and expulsion from the church. She also said that, after the birth, she herself arranged for the child to be taken away and covered all traces. "She erased my history," Evelyn murmured, "as if my daughter never existed." Emily felt a mixture of outrage and compassion. "But why? She was your mother. She was supposed to protect you." Evelyn, in tears, replied, "She thought she was protecting me. But in reality, she broke me inside." As they continued to leaf through the album, more mysteries emerged. Photos with dates changed. Names crossed out. A picture of Evelyn as a child next to another unknown girl, about the same age, with the words Mary Ellen written on the back, then covered with whiteout. Emily looked at her grandmother. "Who was Mary Ellen?" Evelyn was silent for a long time. "I don't know," she finally said. "I've never heard that name. But this girl, she seems familiar." From then on, Emily began to suspect there was more than just a hidden daughter. Perhaps there were other ramifications to this secret. Perhaps the story was even bigger. Over the next few days, Emily scanned all the photos. She used facial recognition software and compared faces against public databases. And that's when something completely unexpected happened. The face of the girl, Mary Ellen, appeared linked to a woman named Martha Ann Willis, who had died 2 years earlier in Memphis. Emily investigated further. Martha Ann had been adopted from Ohio the same year Evelyn was sent there. There was the possibility, as absurd as it seemed, that Evelyn was carrying twins and didn't know it. The birth had been difficult, the pain intense. Had someone hidden this detail from her? Evelyn was floored. "No, this can't be. I would have felt it. I would have remembered." But something inside her wavered. Her mother's letter, the scratched-out photos, the other girl in the album. Everything pointed to a fragmented story, distorted by time, and perhaps intentionally lied to. My own mother deceived me for a lifetime. With the help of a genealogist friend, Emily began a DNA analysis through public databases. She submitted Evelyn's material. And within days, the results came back with a high-probability partial match to 2 grandchildren living in Tennessee. Grandchildren Evelyn had never met, Martha Ann's children. Evelyn broke down. The pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fall into place. A hidden daughter. Another perhaps never mentioned. A mother driven by fear and shame. Photos erased in a desperate attempt to erase the truth. And now, living descendants who had no idea their grandmother was still breathing. Emily decided to contact Martha Ann's grandchildren. She wrote a simple message, "I believe my grandmother is your grandmother too. Can we talk?" The reply came in less than an hour. One of the grandchildren, named Ryan, said, "My mother always suspected she was adopted. Please tell us everything." It was the beginning of a new journey, one Evelyn could never have predicted. As she revisited memories, photos, and letters, she realized her story was much bigger than she'd imagined. And that perhaps God was finally allowing the truth to emerge, like sunlight after a long, stormy night. But one question remained unanswered. Why had Lillian Parker tried so hard to hide it? What exactly was she afraid of? The answer lay in an old diary, a blue-covered notebook hidden inside a sewing box that had been untouched for years. And when Emily opened it, she found a sentence that would change everything. The diary was aged, with a faded blue cover and pages yellowed with age. It belonged to Evelyn's mother, Mrs. Lillian. Emily found it among hand-embroidered threads and old scraps. When she opened it, she realized it wasn't just a notebook, it was a confession. And what was written there wasn't easy to digest. "Today I made a decision that may cost me my soul," began one of the first pages. Lillian described her fear of losing the community's respect, the shame of seeing her daughter dishonored, and the constant pressure from her husband, who preached on Sundays about purity and obedience. It was as if her world were made of appearances. Evelyn read each page silently, tears streaming down her face. For the first time, she understood her mother's fear. But she also felt anger, a dull anger, stifled by years of silence. "She thought more about what others would say than how I felt," he murmured. "But maybe she thought she was saving me. In a twisted way, but she did. In the following pages, Lillian confessed to lying. Evelyn's birth wasn't just one child. She was born with twins. One of the girls was taken first, the other a few minutes later. Evelyn, exhausted, hovering between life and death, never saw them both at the same time. And Lillian swore it was for the salvation of her daughter's soul. Emily was in shock. "You had 2 daughters, Grandma." "2." Evelyn touched her chest, as if trying to find the emptiness she'd always felt. "I thought it was just sadness. But maybe it was longing. Longing for someone I didn't even know existed." The words seemed to come from a very deep place. A place only a mother's love knows. The most shocking part was yet to come. Lillian had kept in touch with the family that adopted Hannah, but never revealed this to her daughter. And with Martha Ann's family as well. She kept track from afar, keeping newspaper clippings, school reports, and even small photographs sent in letters, all hidden among the fabrics in her sewing box. There was proof of what Evelyn had lost: birthday parties, graduations, weddings. Every important event was recorded, as if Lillian wanted to keep it all but couldn't bring herself to give it back to her daughter. Evelyn, in tears, clutched each piece of paper as if holding sacred relics. "My life was erased. And now, it's being written again." The question then echoed in Emily's heart. Who, after all, was the woman who raised her and her mother? That sweet lady, who baked apple pie on holidays and read the Bible softly, hid within herself a broken woman, with 2 daughters torn from her arms and a youth marked by forced silence. But Evelyn was also beginning to rediscover herself. "Maybe I don't know who I am anymore," she said, looking out the window. "I was a mother, but I wasn't. I was a wife, but I hid. I was a woman, but I was never whole." Emily replied firmly, "You are my grandmother. And now, you are also the mother of 2 incredible women who are about to meet you." Gradually, Evelyn allowed new emotions to blossom. She laughed and cried in the same breath. She repeated verses as if she held onto them with all her soul. One of her favorites during that period was, "I will restore the years that have been wasted." Joel 2 verse 25. She repeated it like a mantra, like a promise. It was during this time that Evelyn began writing. Letters to Hannah. Letters to Martha Ann's grandchildren. Letters to God. She said that writing was like opening a wound to let it heal properly. "Perhaps now I understand why Jesus wept for Lazarus. It wasn't just grief. It was love, memory, longing." Over time, word began to spread throughout the city. Evelyn, once seen as the reserved widow from the corner house, was now the target of whispers in the supermarket and long stares at church services. But she no longer hid. She began to speak out. She told her story without shame. Because the truth, even late, has the power to heal. Some older women in the church turned up their noses. One said, "These things aren't told." But Evelyn, with a serene smile, replied, "Then why did God leave so many stories like this in the Bible? David, Rahab, even Mary had to endure the judgment of others. But God knows the heart." And in that moment, Evelyn understood something that changed everything. She was never to blame for any of this. She wasn't weak. She was silenced. She was a victim of a harsh era, of cruel rules, of other people's decisions. But now she chose to be the author of her own future. With a firm voice, she began to say, "Today I am whole." Emily hosted a special tea party with friends and neighbors. Evelyn told her story with a choked voice, but without hesitation. At the end, one of the strictest neighbors stood up and said, "You're braver than all of us put together." Evelyn just smiled. For the first time in a long time, she felt free. Amidst all this, Evelyn began dressing differently. She dyed her hair pearly white, wore flowery dresses that had been stored away for years, and began taking morning walks and singing while watering her plants. Emily realized she was being reborn. Every detail was a small declaration of freedom. But the reunion with her daughters hadn't happened yet. Evelyn wanted to be ready. She wanted to look them in the eyes and tell them everything without fear. So she wrote one last letter. And inside it, she placed something symbolic, a photo of herself holding the little metal box. As if to say, "Here is my truth. Now I can give it to you." The phone rang again on a Saturday afternoon. It was Claire. Her voice was different, softer. "Grandma, she wants to see you." Evelyn closed her eyes. "When?" she asked. "Next Sunday." And then something surprising happened. Evelyn didn't cry. She smiled. A smile full of peace. Sunday dawned with a cloudy sky, as if the weather knew the weight of the day. Evelyn woke before sunrise, put on a light blue dress, the same one she wore to her granddaughter's wedding, and sprayed on an old perfume, Evening in Paris, which she had kept since the 1960s. It was as if the past was being touched for the first time. Emily was driving, but Evelyn's hands were firmly in her lap. She gazed out the window at the landscape as if she were saying goodbye to an old fear. The meeting would be at a simple house on the outskirts of Asheville, nestled in the mountains. Hannah had chosen a discreet spot, away from prying eyes, just them, mother and daughter, in a room with 2 armchairs. As she got out of the car, Evelyn paused for a moment. She took a deep breath. Emily touched her shoulder. "You're not alone." And she replied, "I never was. God was always with me. Even when I questioned him, even when I cried alone, he carried me." The steps to the door felt heavy, but full of purpose. When the door opened, a woman with gray hair and eyes very similar to hers appeared. Hannah. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. They just stared at each other, as if every line of their faces was recognized from somewhere deep within their souls. Then, finally, Evelyn said, "You're beautiful," and began to cry. Hannah hugged her. A long hug, filled with silent tears, that spoke volumes. It was as if time melted away in a single gesture. Emily stood, respecting the moment, her eyes brimming with tears. "I've missed this my whole life," Hannah whispered. And Evelyn replied, "Me too." Even without knowing it. They sat in the living room. There was hot tea, photos on the table, and a sacred silence between them. Evelyn then began to tell everything, without holding anything back. She spoke of her youth, of James, of the letter that was never delivered, of the decision imposed by her mother, of the silent pain, and of how she spent all those years praying that one day she would have the chance to say, "Forgive me." Hannah listened attentively. She cried, smiled, sighed. "I always knew something was missing," she said. "My adoptive mother was wonderful, but I felt a hole, a void that no one could fill. And now, it all makes sense." Evelyn held her hand. "You were ripped from me, but I never stopped loving you. Never." Between memories and confessions, Hannah shared her story as well. She recounted how she discovered she was adopted at 15, how she discreetly searched for years without success, and how she kept an old photo of her grandmother Lillian that she had received without context, and which she now understood to be the key to everything. "I looked at that photo and felt a connection I couldn't explain," Hannah said. "It was the image of your mother, my grandmother." Evelyn closed her eyes, trying to contain her emotions. "She made hard choices. But now I understand that she was also a prisoner of a time that judged more than it loved." And there, in that understanding, the healing began. They talked for hours. They laughed at coincidences, like the fact that they both loved the same psalm, Psalm 91. They cried when they discovered that Evelyn played piano at church, and that Hannah also sang in the choir. "It's in the blood," Evelyn joked, smiling. "In the blood and in the soul," Hannah added, holding her mother's hand. At the end of the day, before they said goodbye, Hannah brought a box. Inside were newspaper clippings, school reports, and childhood photos. "This is my life. I want you to know it. I want to share it with you, even if it's late." Evelyn looked at each image with devotion, as if discovering a sacred story. One of the photos showed Hannah at 4 years old, dressed as an angel in a Christmas pageant. Evelyn placed her hand on her chest. "I dreamed about this, about a little girl like that, dressed in white. It was a dream I had many years ago." Hannah fell silent. "I dreamed about you too, but I didn't know it was you." When they returned home, Evelyn seemed like a different woman. With a sparkle in her eyes Emily had never seen before. That night, she placed James's letter on the table, lit a candle, and said, "Today, my love, our daughter has returned." Emily wept silently. She knew the woman before her was stronger than ever. But the story wasn't over yet. Because while Evelyn was reunited with Hannah, Another part of her soul was still out there in the world. Martha and her other, deceased daughter had left behind descendants, grandchildren who had never known the true story. And now, they were ready to hear the truth from their own grandmother. That week passed in a flash. Evelyn still seemed to hover between the real and the unbelievable. Seeing Hannah, hearing her, touching her, it was like walking through a field of miracles. But at the same time, a part of her heart was still restless. Her other daughter, Martha Ann, was now only a memory, but her children were alive and waiting for her. The phone rang one Wednesday morning. Emily answered and heard a male voice on the other end. "Hi. My name's Ryan. Have you contacted us about Evelyn Parker?" Emily smiled and replied, "Yes. She's your grandmother." There was silence on the other end, followed by a long sigh. "I don't know what to say. I need to hear it." Ryan and his younger sister, Jessica, lived in Austin, Texas. They were both children of Martha and a woman they say spent her life with a distant look in her eyes, as if something was missing. She never knew who her mother was. "And I think that hurt her more than anything," Ryan said, his voice breaking. Evelyn took a deep breath as Emily handed her the phone. "Hello," she said sweetly. "Hi, Grandma," Ryan replied hesitantly. That one word, so small, cut through decades of silence. Evelyn closed her eyes and let the tears flow. "Yes, my grandson. I'm your grandmother. And I've waited so long to say it." The conversation lasted over an hour. Evelyn told everything, from the beginning. Her youth, the forced separation, her mother's diary, the surprise of discovering she had twins. Ryan listened to everything without interrupting. Then he spoke about his mother. She was a strong woman. But there were days when she would be sad without explanation. Maybe now, everything will fit together. Jessica, the younger sister, joined the call on speakerphone. "I always thought there was something strange. Mom used to talk about dreams about a woman with white hair, a lavender scent, and a sad smile. I think it was you." Evelyn smiled, moved. Maybe the soul recognizes what the body cannot touch. They scheduled a meeting for the following month. The grandchildren wanted to travel to North Carolina. "We want to see where it all began. Feel the roots. See the eyes of the woman who carried our mother for 9 months, and loved her even though she couldn't raise her." Evelyn began preparing the house as if expecting a sacred visit. Emily helped with everything. Photos were scattered around the room, and Evelyn's youthful Bible was placed on the table, along with letters from James and old newspaper clippings. It was like creating an altar of memories. And in Evelyn's heart, a constant prayer, "Lord, may they see the love in me. May there be no bitterness left, only redemption." On the day of the meeting, Evelyn wore a hand-embroidered blouse with small lilac flowers that her mother had sewn decades ago. "Even with everything she did, she was the one who gave me the strength to stay alive," she said. "And today, by the grace of God, I will embrace the fruits she tried to hide." Emily wiped away a tear. She didn't know it, but she planted love anyway. When the car arrived, Evelyn walked to the gate. Ryan got out first. He was tall, with the same eyes as Grandpa James. Jessica followed close behind, smiling, a bouquet of lavender in her hands. "I thought you might like this." Evelyn hugged them as if rewinding time. "I've dreamed of this moment my whole life." They entered the house and sat at the table. The initial silence was heavy, but not uncomfortable. It was reverent, as if everyone knew they were treading on sacred ground. Evelyn showed them the album, the letters, the clippings. And when she handed them her mother's diary, she simply said, that was her truth. "Now it's our turn to write ours." Jessica, leafing through the diary, began to cry. "Your mother's pain was like mine. They were broken by a time that didn't forgive strong women." Evelyn squeezed her hand. "But now, we are free. Free to tell, to cry, to love without fear." Ryan simply whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on us." The day was filled with conversation, laughter, and confessions. Jessica shared that she also sings in a choir and feels a strange connection to old hymns. Evelyn closed her eyes and softly sang, "Amazing Grace." Everyone was moved. It was as if the music stitched together the broken generations. As if God were there, among them. At the end of the visit, Evelyn handed Jessica a silver ring with a small blue stone. "It was my mother's. I want you to keep it. May this past, however painful it was, now be a reminder that love always wins." Jessica wept and said, "You're giving me a piece of our history. And that's worth more than any treasure." Ryan asked to take a picture in front of the house. "I want to show it to my son one day. Tell him this was the house where my grandmother found the truth again." Evelyn smiled. "And tell him that God never abandons a faithful heart. Sometimes He just waits for the right moment to sew together what was torn." As the car drove off, Evelyn remained standing, watching until they were out of sight. Emily hugged her grandmother and said, "You are the strongest woman I know." Evelyn replied calmly, "No, my dear. I'm just a woman who believed, even when all seemed lost." But that story wasn't over yet. Evelyn felt she needed to do more. Tell this story to the world. Show that silence can last decades, but the truth always finds a way to blossom. And that's when Emily had an idea that would change everything. Record a video. And tell the internet everything. Emily set up a small camera on the bookshelf in the living room. She adjusted the lighting and sound, and gently prepared Evelyn. "You don't have to say everything, just what you want to share." But Evelyn was determined. "I spent over 60 years silent. Now, I need to tell. Not for myself, but for all the women who suffered in silence like me." She began with a firm but gentle voice. "My name is Evelyn May Parker. I'm 89 years old. And this is the story I've kept all my life." The video lasted 42 minutes. She told it all: the forbidden love, the secret birth, the forced abandonment, the pain, the reunion. And she ended with tears in her eyes. "But God never left me." Emily posted the video on the channel she used for her grandmother's recipe videos. And in less than 24 hours, it exploded. Thousands of views. Emotional comments. "This is my grandmother's story too. I cried like a baby. She's a hero." Evelyn read each comment with a restrained smile. There's so much hidden pain out there. But the video brought more than affection. It also brought the attention of her extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins, and even children of church acquaintances. Some were moved. Others, outraged. The next day, the phone rang. It was her younger sister, Ruth. The voice was harsh. "Why did you tell the world this? It shames us." Evelyn remained silent. "Because it's true, Ruth. And because hiding this truth has destroyed me for decades." Ruth countered, "Mom isn't here to defend herself anymore. Dad died with his reputation intact. And now you're dragging all this through the mud." Evelyn replied firmly, "I'm not tarnishing anyone's memory. I'm cleansing my own soul." In the following days, other family members called. Some to congratulate, others to question. Evelyn remained firm. "I don't ask anyone to understand. But I need to live my last years in peace. And peace doesn't reside in silence." Emily was impressed by her grandmother's courage. She had spent her life hiding. Now, she was the bravest woman she knew. An old friend from her youth, named Grace, appeared at the door one morning. She carried an envelope. "I found this among my mother's things. It's for you." It was an old letter, written by Evelyn's mother, Lillian. In it, there was an unsent apology. "I was wrong. In the name of religion, I killed your hope. May God forgive me." Evelyn cried as she read those words. She knew, even if she never told me, that letter was like a belated hug, like an apology from beyond. And in that moment, Evelyn chose, "I forgive you, Mom. I forgive you." Emily hugged her tightly. "You're more like Jesus than you know." But the video's impact grew. A local journalist contacted her. He wanted to write a story. Evelyn hesitated, but then agreed. Maybe it's time to show the world that there's beauty even in the rubble. The story came out on a Sunday. The headline read, "The Woman Who Kept Quiet for 60 Years, and Now Teaches the World to Speak." The story went viral. Major channels republished the video. Evelyn was invited for interviews. Churches invited her to speak. Universities asked permission to use the story in women's history classes. And amidst this storm, Evelyn remained the same, making tea, reading her Bible, and tending to her plants. But not everything was rosy. In one of these interviews, a presenter asked a direct question, "Do you blame your mother for everything?" Evelyn paused. She thought, and calmly replied, "No. She was also a victim. Of her time. Of misinterpreted religion. Of fear. But if I can tell this story today, it's because she also taught me to have faith." There was silence in the studio. And then there was quiet applause. The interview went viral. Thousands of people shared it. A psychologist wrote, "Evelyn is healing generations with the courage of a redeemed soul." Evelyn read this comment and replied, laughing, "I'm just trying to sleep soundly." But then came the news no one expected. One of Hannah's cousins, the adoptive family's daughter, was suing Evelyn for post-mortem defamation. She claimed the video denigrated the adoptive parent's image. Evelyn was shaken. "I never meant to offend anyone. I just wanted to tell my part of the truth." The case gained notoriety, and a support network formed around Evelyn. Women's groups, volunteer lawyers, and even pastors spoke out. She spoke with love. That's not a crime, it's courage. The case was dismissed. And Evelyn learned a new lesson. Speaking the truth, even with tenderness, still frightens those who live by lies. That week, Evelyn received a letter from a young woman in Alaska. It said, "I was going to give up on life this week. But I heard your story. And I decided to try one more day. Thank you, Evelyn." She clutched the letter to her chest. If one soul was saved, then it was all worth it. Emily wept. "You are light, Grandma. Light in the darkness." But even with all the hustle and bustle, Evelyn knew she needed a private moment. She went to the local cemetery and took flowers to James's grave, a small space with a simple headstone. She sat beside him and spoke as if he were there. "I found our daughters. They are wonderful. And I never stopped loving you." On the way home, he passed a church playing, "It Is Well With My Soul." He smiled. Now it's all right with my soul. But there was one last thing she wanted to do. Bring everyone together. Hannah, Ryan, Jessica, Emily. And celebrate. Not the pain, but the redemption. And so the idea of a big family gathering was born. From the first day that Old Metal Box was opened, Evelyn sensed something divine was happening. It wasn't just a coincidence. It was an answer to prayer. Years ago, alone, kneeling on the floor of her bedroom, she had asked God for just one thing. "Lord, if I've done something wrong, show me. And heal me." The answer came not in words, but in events that would change the course of her life. Evelyn began to see her story as a living testimony. Everything that happened to me was permitted, so that one day I could say, God sustained my soul even when my heart could no longer bear it. He began writing scriptures on small pieces of paper. He placed them on doors, in the kitchen, in the bathroom, even in Emily's car. His favorites: Isaiah 41 verse 10, Psalm 34 verse 18, Romans 8 verse 28. Each was like a balm, a daily reminder that God had never left the scene, just waiting for the right moment to act. At Sunday services, Evelyn sang again. The church fell silent as she took the pulpit for the first time in so many years. With a firm voice, she sang, "Great is thy faithfulness." No one dared interrupt. Some wept. Others held their children's hands. There, the Holy Spirit seemed to walk among the pews. After the service, a young mother approached. Her eyes were red. She said, "I was forced to give up my baby for adoption 5 years ago. No one knows. But today, listening to you sing, I felt God embrace me." Evelyn smiled, placed her hand on the young woman's shoulder, and replied, "God knows your pain. And He is holding your story dearly." Some said Evelyn was exposing herself too much. "Aren't you ashamed to tell all this?" asked a woman on the reception committee. Evelyn smiled sweetly and replied, "Shame is living a lie. The truth hurts, but it sets you free. And Jesus is the truth. He said it." One Wednesday, Emily found Evelyn reading the book of Job. She marked a passage and said, "This man lost everything, but he never lost his faith." And in the end, God restored twice as much. I don't want twice as much. I just want the peace he found. Emily replied, You already have it, Grandma. Peace lives in your smile. Evelyn began recording short daily videos, reading verses and praying. She called them Minutinhos com vo Evelyn. Soon, thousands of women were watching. Comments poured in from all over the country. Your prayers saved me today. You're like my grandmother, only filled with the Holy Spirit. But there was a fear still buried deep in her heart, the moment when they would all be together. Hannah, Ryan, Jessica, Emily, reunited under one roof. Evelyn prayed for this every day. Lord, let there be no hard feelings. Let the past be like dust blown away by the wind. Let forgiveness be the bread on our table. Emily decided to make this gathering special. She rented a small farmhouse in the mountains. She prepared everything with love, a rustic wooden table, photos hanging from the trees, candles lit at dusk. Evelyn, upon seeing the decorations, cried, It feels like a little piece of heaven. I don't even know if I deserve this much. Hannah arrived first, with flowers and an apple pie. Then came Ryan and Jessica, carrying a handmade album. Emily arranged everything, as if preparing a Christmas dinner. When everyone was seated, Evelyn stood, held up her Bible, and said, Today, we don't celebrate what we've lost. We celebrate what God has restored. Jessica offered the prayer before the meal. She trembled a little at first, but then found strength. Lord, thank you for making the impossible happen. Thank you for bringing our grandmother back, even though we didn't even know she existed. Thank you for not giving up on us. Tears flowed unabashedly. After the meal, they shared stories. They laughed at old photos, reminisced, and discovered striking similarities. Ryan and Emily liked the same 90s bands. Hannah and Evelyn had the same way of frowning when they thought. Jessica had a gift for writing, like her great-grandmother Lillian. Evelyn realized there that time doesn't erase blood. Soul ties survive any distance. Genetics may explain appearance, but it's the spirit that connects us. She looked at each one as if contemplating a masterpiece made of pieces mended with faith, patience, and tears. That night, they sat around a campfire. Evelyn told the story of falling off her bike at age 8 and vowing never to ride again. But my dad got me back on. He said, Don't be afraid to fall. Be afraid not to try. Everyone laughed. But the message stuck. It was what she wanted to say about life. Emily handed her grandmother a small wooden box. Inside were pieces of the blue ribbon, copies of the letters, and photos of her daughters. Evelyn held it all like a treasure. This here is my legacy. Not the suffering, but the truth, the courage, and the faith that sustained it all. Her eyes shining, she said, I'm no longer afraid of tomorrow. The video Evelyn recorded on her couch at home was sincere, almost improvised. There was no professional set, no script. Just a camera, a woman with eyes full of stories, and a heart willing to tear apart the silence. I just wanted to leave a testimony, something that would last for when I was no longer here, she said at the beginning of the video. But what Evelyn didn't expect was that millions of people would see themselves in that testimony. The video was reposted by influencers, journalists, therapists, and even religious groups. A week later, it had surpassed 5 million views. Evelyn could hardly believe it. All this, for telling the truth. The press began calling the story America's Grandmother. Websites ran headlines like, Woman reveals secret kept for over 60 years and moves the country. Evelyn, shyly, simply said, It's all God. I just opened my mouth. He spoke. And truly, there was something sacred in every word she said. Emily managed the contacts. She carefully selected interviews, responded to messages, and read comments aloud to her grandmother. You gave me the courage to search for my birth mother. I also had a hidden child. Thank you for opening this conversation. You healed a part of my story. What no one expected was the impact on younger people. Evelyn began receiving letters from teenagers, young mothers, and even men who had abandoned children in the past. One 17-year-old boy wrote, I was too embarrassed to cry. But after your video, I cried with my father. And I forgave him. That's when a major national TV channel called. They invited Evelyn to a special Mother's Day program. Emily hesitated. "Are you sure you want all this, Grandma? It's too much exposure." But Evelyn calmly replied, "If God gave me this voice now, I won't hide. Let's show that love has no expiration date." The interview was moving. The host, visibly moved, couldn't hold back tears as he listened to her story. "You are a living miracle, Evelyn." She smiled and replied, "I am nothing without God. He sustained every tear I cried alone." The audience gave a standing ovation. And on social media, videos of the program went viral again. With the repercussion, unexpected invitations arrived. A publisher proposed writing a book. Universities asked her to speak at events about the feminine and spiritual power of broken silence. Pastors called, asking permission to use her testimony in sermons. Evelyn turned down many, but accepted those she felt in her heart. One day, she received an invitation that made her tremble. "We want to make a documentary." The proposal was beautiful, nothing sensationalist, just a way to tell her story through images. Showing the house, the church, the albums, the letters. Evelyn accepted, with one condition: "I want the last scene to be me saying, 'The pain is gone. God remains.'" During the recordings, reunions took place. People from the past appeared. An old childhood friend, Judith, who had also become pregnant and secretly lost her son, appeared. "I watched your video and realized I wasn't the only one. I hid my son my whole life. Today, I'm going to look for him." They embraced, through silent tears. Meanwhile, the channel Minyatinho's Com Vo Evelyn surpassed 1 million followers. Evelyn made short, 1-minute videos, reading a verse and offering a reflection. It's not about religion. It's about living faith. God speaks to each person's heart, the way only He knows how. And it was impossible not to be moved. One of these videos reached 30 million views. It was simple. Evelyn held a photo of her daughters and said, "God restored what I thought was lost. And He can do the same for you. Don't give up." The video became the soundtrack to moving videos on thousands of profiles. It was as if her voice were now a digital prayer. But not everyone was happy with the exposure. An old family acquaintance sent a harsh letter. "You are tarnishing your father's name. You should have left the past where it was." Evelyn responded sweetly and firmly, "Those who live by appearances fear the light. I live by the truth, and it has set me free." At the height of the impact, Evelyn was invited to speak at a religious event attended by over 5,000 people. Emily hesitated, but Evelyn accepted. She walked onto the stage hand in hand with Hannah, Jessica, Ryan, and Emily. "I'm not here because I'm strong. I'm here because God sustained me even when I felt dead inside." The audience fell silent. And when Evelyn concluded, saying, "If God restored my story, He can restore yours too. Just trust," the auditorium erupted in applause, hugs, and tears. It was more than a testimony. It was a revival. Backstage, a woman in her 90s approached and said, "I've waited my whole life to hear something like this. Now I can leave in peace." Evelyn tenderly held her hand and replied, "Don't leave yet. God still has beautiful things to show you." But one final surprise was yet to come. While filming the documentary, a producer found an unexpected clue among old documents: the name of a third child who had been registered at the same hospital. Evelyn was shocked. This has to be a mistake. Or a new beginning. The name was Grace and, registered at the same hospital on the same day, with a changed surname. Records were scarce, but the documentary's producer raised the hypothesis: could there have been a third child? Evelyn, upon hearing that, froze. No. I would have felt. I would have known. But something inside her trembled. Emily investigated further. She discovered that Grace and had been adopted by a wealthy Chicago family. There wasn't much information. But the detail that caught her attention was a radio interview with a Christian businesswoman named Grace and Wilcox, who claimed to have been adopted and never known her biological mother. Evelyn listened to the audio and clutched her chest. There was something familiar about the voice. A firm yet sweet tone. Like a musical note the heart recognizes. Evelyn fell silent. And then he whispered, God Is it possible? It was as if each twist and turn were written in the ink of the unexpected, as if the scars left by life were forming a new bridge. The search for grace and began cautiously. Evelyn prayed daily, "Lord, only show me if it's your will." She had already found 2 daughters, grandchildren, followers. She needed to be sure her heart could handle one more surprise. But Emily knew that story hadn't yet said its last word. Meanwhile, Evelyn began writing letters to everyone who had touched her life. To her mother, to James, to her daughters, to her granddaughters, and even to herself. Writing became healing. Each sentence felt like a prayer. Each full stop, a scar that healed painlessly. Life wounded me, but God sewed it together with love. Hannah began visiting Evelyn every week. Jessica did too. Ryan called her Grandma Evie and taught her how to use a messaging app. Emily cared for her grandmother like a garden that had finally blossomed. The house, once silent, was now filled with laughter, the smell of cake, and rebuilt memories. With each visit, Evelyn told a new story. Some sad, some funny, but always with a touch of faith. If we cling only to pain, it swallows us. But if we let God work, even grief becomes fertile soil. Everyone listened as if listening to a psalm. Because Evelyn was now a voice. A voice that consoles. A voice that heals. At church, they began calling her Miss Testimony. She laughed. "Guys, I just told my story. It's God who performs miracles." But deep down, she knew, her life had become a miracle. Not because of fame, but because she survived a kind of pain that could have killed her soul, and chose to forgive. The call from Chicago came on a cold afternoon. It was an assistant to Mrs. Wilcox. She was curious about the contact. "She's willing to talk." Evelyn shivered. Emily took her hand. "Do you want to talk to her?" Evelyn replied with a tear streaming down her face. "I do. Even if it's not her. I want to thank you for the chance." The conversation was brief but impactful. Grace was polite, kind, and curiously emotional. Evelyn, without revealing everything, told part of the story. "Maybe you mean more to me than you realize." Grace replied, "I've been dreaming about a lady who calls me daughter. It may sound crazy, but I think it's real." Evelyn knew in that moment. The heart knows. Even when the mind doubts, the soul recognizes. But as she hung up, she simply said, "I won't force it. If it's meant to be, it will be." Emily agreed. God has the right time for every bridge to be crossed. And so, they decided to wait. For the answer. For confirmation. For the next line heaven would write. The following Sunday, Evelyn took everyone to church. Hannah, Ryan, Jessica, Emily. It was their first time together in a service. The community welcomed them with emotion. At the end, Evelyn asked to speak. With the Bible open on her lap, she said, "These are my scars, but they are also my bridges. Because it was through them that I found all of you." The silence was moving. The church was in tears. Evelyn concluded, "Don't be ashamed of what hurt you. God uses wounds to write stories of healing." And in that moment, everyone knew, that small woman, with a firm voice and a tender smile, had become something greater, a symbol of living hope. After the service, Evelyn sat alone in the church garden. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you, Lord, for not giving up on me, for waiting for the right time, for giving me another chance, so close to the end." And there, in silence, she understood, the end was only the beginning. Grace didn't call back that day. But Evelyn didn't worry. God's timing isn't mine. I just plant. He's the one who makes things bloom. Emily, beside her, said, "You taught me that, Grandma." And Evelyn replied, "Then spread it. Tell others. That no one is too late to be loved again." How many stories do you know that were kept hidden out of fear? How many women have you seen silenced, forced to hide what hurt most in their hearts, just to avoid embarrassing someone, just to save face? The truth is, everyone carries something. An old pain. A name that can't be said. A longing that can't be explained. And sometimes, a guilt that wasn't even yours. But Evelyn's story shows that it's never too late to start over. It's never too late to find the one you thought you'd lost. Maybe you've also experienced something no one knows about. Maybe you cried in secret in the bathroom, or held back your pain while everyone around you smiled. Maybe you've also been silenced by an era, by a name, by a religion. But I need to tell you, God hasn't forgotten you. If He restored Evelyn's story after more than 60 years of silence, what can He still do with your life? What can still blossom within your heart? And now I ask you, have you ever felt like you hid a part of your story out of fear? What would you do if you had the chance to meet someone you thought you had lost forever? Would you forgive, or would you stay stuck in the pain? Tell me in the comments. Share it with me, because maybe your story will be the beginning of another woman's healing too. And please, if this story touched you in any way, like the video, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. This really helps bring these stories to more hearts in need. And I thank you with all my love. May God deeply bless your life. May He give you peace, strength, and courage to live your truth with love and faith. Never doubt this. You are loved, and your story matters.